food justice projects across the UK, united by 4 interconnected aims to tackle food insecurity, food waste, social isolation and social inequality. We're an action-focused organisation. We're not asking the government to start this. Communities are already building this for themselves and must be supported. Every Thursday in August, our webinars will hear consecutively from groups working to tackle food insecurity on the ground, directors of National Food Service branches across the country who want to support others to do the same, and leading academics in the field of food justice, as well as community food partners working at all levels of the food chain to try and create a more just food system. Although we as an organisation have grown exponentially in the past 18 weeks, we've still got a lot of learning to do so that we can feed even more people and create even more resilient, tighter communities. Today we're going to hear from 3 organisations across the country who have collectively cooked over 1 million meals during COVID. If we're going to create a new public service, we must learn from and work with organisations cooking on such a big scale. We have been closely watching and have been truly inspired by the amazing work of these organisations and are honoured to have them here today so we can learn from their work. First up, we've got Suk Dillon, a key volunteer of GMG Gurdwara, which is based in Slough. It was set up by the Sikh community in 2015 and is run completely by volunteers. With the culture of langar, community kitchens, deeply embedded within Sikhism, they're extremely well set up to help their community throughout the pandemic. As we're going to hear more of, during the COVID-19 crisis, GMGG have reinvented themselves as an emergency food provider, cooking up to 6,000 hot meals a day and hundreds of food parcels for their community. So I'm now going to hand over to Suk, who's going to tell us a bit more. Can you unmute yourself? Is that possible?
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you, Celine, for the very eloquent introduction, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak on this platform. So yeah, I mean, basically, Guru Manya Granth Gurdwara, GMGG, is based in Slough, Berkshire. We opened in 2015. It's UK's largest Gurdwara temple, and it's sitting on a 4-acre site. It's completely run by volunteers. It's it's housing different projects from the temple. So we've got a Punjabi and Sikh history school. We've got classes for all different people, young people, old people. We've also got 2 art exhibitions there, and we also do skill centre. We run a skill centre from there also. So there's lots of different things going on at the Gurdwara. Just prior to COVID, there was 160 people from across the world meditating for at the temple, staying at the temple, meditating for about 84 hours a week, and spiritually attaining what the teachings of our holy scriptures are, and really trying to kind of look at their own mind, basically. Then just prior to COVID, so in March, we were sitting down, there's 3 of us, and we decided that on March the 15th, this was that we should do some kind of program where we wanted to help the elderly in the area, simply because we had heard that there was a lot of issues around getting, people queuing up for toiletries and food, etc. And we just thought, oh, look, there's a lot of elderly around the temple, we need to help them. And so the journey kind of began there. And at the peak, we served 12,000 meals in one day, cooked meals, that is. We've done 200 odd tons of fresh produce distributed to different charities. We're working with 140 different organizations across London. So we're traveling all the way from, in this last 5-6 months, we've traveled all the way to Birmingham, we've been to Kent, we've been to Gravesend, we've been, so all over the country. But our main focus has been in London and Greater London. It's all to do, when we go back to Sikhism and look at the Gurdwara, the tenets of, the Gurdwara and Sikhism are to the meditation, serving humanity, and unity and equality amongst all humankind. And what we've basically done is looked at these three tenets, and that's what we've taken forward in this project. And Langar is a key component of Sikhs. Also, it's a free kitchen open to everybody across the world. Any temple, Sikh temple across the world has Langar, where anybody from any faith background, etc., could go in and have a free meal. And so when COVID and the lockdown began, we just then decided to, as instead of people coming into the Gurdwara, we thought, okay, let's now start packing Langar and taking it out to the communities. And so my background is homelessness, and so originally I just kind of focused on what I knew. We kind of went to drawing board and said, okay, let's just reach out to the organizations that we know. And that then quickly changed a little when we got some media attention. So we originally got some media attention quite early on in April from ITV, who then approached us and said, you know, you're doing this, can you come onto our news channel and discuss, you know, how you come about this and, you know, why you're doing it. And so we spoke about, again, the principles of Sikhism, about helping everybody in time of need. And I suppose, you know, that was a kind of the base of everything. Further along the lines, some of you might have seen, there was a BBC kind of short documentary that they made. They visited the temple, spent some time with us just to understand who we're visiting, are we going to, you know, which different organizations and what our remit was. But our remit, so to speak, there was no remit. We just wanted to, anybody who was calling us saying that we need meals or our community needs meals, we were turning up in our van the next day. And that kind of was quite surprising. And one of the things, you know, which one of the key things is that nobody, we've not raised any funds for this. So it's completely been run by the Gurdwara, completely funded by the Gurdwara. Everybody's a volunteer. And so at the starting, the Gurdwara decided that we have a donation box at the temple. So anyone who visits the temple can pay a little bit of, put a little bit of money in, or if they want to. But if they don't want to, they don't have to. But that box, so to speak, there's a saying in Punjabi, which means that when there's a time of need, every penny from that box will go to the needy. And so that's exactly what we've done. And we still continue. So right now, our numbers have decreased a little bit. So we were doing around 46 or 47,000 meals a week. The numbers have gone down to about 20,000. We're now looking to kind of maybe move over to redistribute fresh produce along with cooked meals. But we're looking at, and I was just speaking to Adam, looking at schools and especially children who are not eligible for the food vouchers, and see how we can help and support them families who are not eligible at this time of need. I suppose that kind of is us at the moment. I'm sure if anyone's got any questions, I'd be happy to answer. I think there's going to be Sunny on next, or Adam, and then we can come back and ask any questions you like.
Thank you, Suk. That's really amazing. I just can't believe how many meals you've managed to cook. It's really, really impressive, especially given you've had no other funding apart from through the Gurdwara. Yeah, there will be time for questions at the end, and I'm sure that people have got many. But next, we're going to hear from Sunny, who's the founder of Edible London, and they've been working in and around the borough of Haringey in North London, and are motivated by the belief that everyone has the right to access healthy and nutritious food whilst learning to feed their community through growing food. And they were established in 2015 from Sunny's small back garden, but during COVID-19, their operations have grown very rapidly, and they were operating outside of Alexandra Palace and producing over 50,000 meals a week. So they've massively upscaled, and it's really, really inspiring. So it'd be great to hear a bit more from Sunny about that.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, just echoing what Suk said, thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here to share the work that we're doing and get the awareness out there. So how how was Edible London formed? Why was Edible London formed? Where did we come from? It's all a little bit organic, to be honest. It started with a change of lifestyle for me, really. I just wanted to go back to the land and go back to basics and grow a little bit of food in my mum and dad's garden. Fortunately, I ran out of space and come across an amazing community asset called Wolves Lane, which is where the journey really started. And I started volunteering for this site for about 3 months, and it's the first time I've volunteered in my life, and I definitely got the buzz for it because 3 years later I haven't stopped volunteering. So it was a new experience for me as well to actually see and meet people in my community and to open my eyes around the problems within the community was really, really shocking. And I suppose the more I learned about the food poverty, the food injustice, just injustice in general within communities and all the things wrong with it, the more I was inspired myself to do something to make a change. So Edible London is everything and then some. Whatever the community needs, we will find a way to correlate that problem or that issue back to food, or use food as a platform to even discuss the problem and then find a way forward. So that's pretty much what Edible London is. At the beginning of when we started producing food and actually harvesting the food, there was an abundance of it. And it was about finding where this food should really go. So we actually started working with a homeless shelter that my friend put me in touch with. And then one of our biggest sort of relationships that started was with Feast with Us. And I started volunteering for them as well. And it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing to see how many like-minded people would get behind a vision. And the vision, as simple as I claim I am, I know my vision is far more complex, that's for sure. And pre-COVID-19, we were going through the ingredients and sourcing ingredients to cook up about 200 meals a day. We test piloted our own soup kitchen, but the predominant work that we do is actually sourcing surplus food, saving food from going into the bin, and then finding people in the community that are cooking amazing, nutritious food and donating it to them. So pre-COVID-19, we were reaching about 200 people. COVID-19 started and we scaled up to 50,000 meals being cooked out of the food we saved a week within a very short time. I mean, we went from 7 volunteers at Wolves Lane when we started this COVID operation with Haringey Council as well, because we also partnered with the council who done something like 176,000 hampers within their operation, of which again was astonishing to see how the community got behind it. And yeah, we went from 7 volunteers to 350 volunteers in a matter of weeks. And it wasn't just a matter of scaling up to that many volunteers. It was a matter of incubating them in a safe way as well. And no way, shape or form could I have done this. When I tell you the skill sets that surfaced from our community, the people that came and got involved and said, oh, we could do this, we could do spreadsheets, we could build programs, we could do this. Half of this stuff I don't know about. You know, I'm very, very minimal when it comes to technology. So I'm only learning how to use Zoom now, which is phenomenal. But yeah, it was astonishing to just do what I was doing, because I don't stop. I just work. I'm a doer. I'm a worker. I'm a grafter. I see a problem. I see a connection. And networking is the most important thing in any form of success. Whatever you're going to do, you have to network. You have to talk to people. So everything Edible London's achieved, we've got so many donations of so many organisations because I purely talk to them. I will go into their shop and I will talk to them and I'll tell them what I'm doing and tell them how much, you know, £100 worth of soil means to us. You know, how much one seed, a tiny little seed, if nurtured and germinated properly, you know, for a season you could get 40 kilos of tomatoes. So it just proves that nothing is too small and everything is reachable. When I started Edible London, you know, one of my things was to eliminate money, eliminate the mandatory system. I grew up in a very Turkish Cypriot culture, and my dad, God bless him, he always said to me, you know, you need money to make money, son. And it wasn't that I wanted to do this to prove my dad wrong, but what is the point in being alive if you need something in order to achieve something and you ain't got that? It doesn't make sense. So I eliminated it. And 2 years we went in Edible London. When I tell you we've educated children with whole corporate workshops, we've been to schools, we've done sensory classes with autistic children. Pre-COVID-19, we fed up to 20,000 homeless people. You know, we've done all of this and all through kindness. No one in my organisation has pulled a penny, including me. You know, we received a little bit of money for running the COVID operation for Haringey Council, and a few people in my organisation got paid for that. And only now, where we relocated to Stamford Hill, which is a temporary distribution centre for us, we've got, again, a little bit of money, and we made the decision to employ people from our community first. So it's a miracle, guys. I can't explain it. It's hard. I've been in so many interviews and I've tried to explain Edible London and how did we scale up? I don't know. I honestly haven't got a clue. It genuinely happened. I've never witnessed this amount of solidarity in my community, you know, and making connections, making partnerships and working. Like, we worked with the GMGG. Do you know how much food these people deliver to us? And then we redistribute it. And so many others, Compassion London, Food for All. You know, we partnered up with a group called Chaotic Angels, a biker group. And again, the reasons behind it was not just through food. I myself was guilty of having, you know, a stereotype of bikers. So when a biker crew approached me and said, you know, we want to help you, I was like, absolutely, how can you help? So it's about being diverse. It's about understanding and being completely open-minded to everybody and uniting under one banner. If we do not unite together and stop pointing, I don't like pointing the finger. You know, my cousin, I've got a cousin who always says to me, cousin, if you're pointing your finger at someone, you're pointing 3 fingers right back at yourself. So yeah, we live in a bureaucratic world. It's really, really hard sometimes. And coming into the charity sector, you know, pre-COVID-19, none of us could get funding applications. All of a sudden, there's this massive pocket of money that's available for everybody. You know, why wasn't that money available pre-COVID-19? And maybe we tackled 250,000 homeless people. But it seems like the world we live in waits for a great catastrophe or something really massive to happen, which is usually bad. And then all of a sudden, all of these positive things that weren't once available become available. So I'm a big believer in, out of every great adversary, a greater seed of benefit comes from it. And I'm just lucky to be a farmer. I know how to nurture seeds. So I suppose them two things really go well hand in hand. Working with councils and governments and seeing how the council and government have dealt with this, I honestly think they've dealt with it within their best capability. They are not community people. You know, a lot of people have thrown up a lot of complaints towards the way the government has worked it, the parcels they were putting out. You know, not everyone knows about nutrition. Not everyone knows about cultural food. So I think teaming up, and one thing I say, teamwork makes the dream work. Like, Edible London and many other organisations are living proof of that. Like, so much has been achieved from so many people across the capital. And these are just individual people saying, you know what, I've got time. And that is the ultimate thing. It's time. You know, no matter what we do, if we do not have the time and the resilience to commit to something, it will never come to be. So the food supply, this was the big one. You know, being a farmer, I've been a farmer most of my life. My dad was a farmer, my granddad was a farmer. So I know a lot of greengrocers. I know a lot of people in Spitalfield Market. I know a lot of people in the Farmers Union across the Europe as well. So there's some real big things taking place in Edible London. And I suppose we're just blessed with Fresh and Fruity as well. I have to give them absolute admiration because they've connected so many dots. And the food we are going through, guys, is food that would otherwise end up in a bin. You know, you get a tray of peaches and 4 of them are bad. Most corporate companies do not think of cleaning the bad ones out and making use of the good ones. It costs them too much money. So it's unbelievable how the vision I had around saving food and saving the plastic and stripping the plastic and making eco bricks and not only running a food operation, but making it a full-on sustainable food operation. The amount of eco bricks that we made through our operation at Alexandra Palace, the amount of bike holders we made out of pallets, pallet planters that we're now growing food in, you know, it's the full-on cycle. And this is something that I'm very much keen on always doing. You know, if you're going to deal with a problem, we need to deal with this problem in the most effective way possible. This is why I say tackling malnutrition in the homeless sector with nutritious food. Because if we're feeding a homeless person, number one, if we're feeding them meat, it's not good for them. You know, meat for a homeless person, someone who hasn't got the vitamins in their body, it's not very good. And there's dietary restrictions. This is why Edible London mainly work with organisations that only do vegan and vegetarian. And if we're to do our own cooking, it's always vegan and vegetarian because it's inclusive to everyone. So yeah, it's about making things inclusive and trying to do it whilst making it sustainable and being mindful of everyone who's involved. And I'm guilty of not being able to do that. I met a lot of people on this journey, and the 16-week journey, you know, I've got a few moments to say hello to people and start friendships, and I never got to fulfill them friendships and to continue talking with people because things get so busy. And we are all sometimes guilty of taking our eyes off the ball, you know. And one of the most important things for me was when things did get hard for me, because I was very close to burnout, and to be honest, I did burn out. I had an amazing team of people behind me that recognized that saw that, and completely showed me the support I needed. So supporting one another was really, really important. Sometimes it's easy to get lost in a vision. I'm also guilty of that. You get so passionate and you see, wow, like, look, all I've done was go for a walk. I grew a few tomatoes, and all of a sudden we've got an organisation that's just fed 500,000 people. How was that possible? It's just like the unfathomable happens on a daily basis in Edible London. It really is phenomenal. Got just one last thing, a couple of last things that I want to cover. The future of Edible London. Where are we going and where we're at right now is astonishing. We've done a crowdfunder, guys, and we raised £50,000 in a short amount of time from 446 people, I think it was. But what's happened to Edible London is we've opened the doors to money now. The company is ready. We have built everything we have built on perfect intentions, and that is the most important thing. We're humans. None of us can be perfect, and it's absolutely fine not to be, because through making mistakes, I don't even subscribe to the word mistake. A mistake to me is merely an opportunity to learn and to grow. And I say that to everyone in my organization. And yeah, I sit back with the founder hat or the CEO hat, but there's no hierarchy in my organization. We work together in solidarity. And I'm humbled to be part of this. And I'm really, really, really gobsmacked to see the level of solidarity in our community. We need to keep this going and remember it. Not let COVID-19 pass and all of a sudden we forget what we as a community, what we as people have done for so many people, guys. And food poverty is out there. Haringey, Hackney, Enfield, you know, all these areas I work very closely with, they're in a lot of trouble. And we need to stand together, and now is the time. So yeah, thank you for having me. I'm going to stop there and let everyone carry on talking. Big love.
Sunny, that was really incredible. It feels really inspiring, and it's so nice that there are so many similar principles to us in terms of having a non-hierarchical organisation and also thinking about the power of community. And that has ultimately got us this far over the past 18, well, the past 5 years, and the same for you. And it's just really exciting, and it makes me really enthusiastic, and I'm sure everyone else, for the future. So the next person that we're going to, Louis, is it you? Can you put yourself on mute, please? I don't know who's on the iPhone, but could they put themselves on mute? Sorry. So the next person that we're going to hear from is Adam Roberts, the CEO of Open Kitchens. So Adam's been working in the restaurant space for 12 years now, building digital technologies. But when the restaurant industry shut down, he and his team redirected their efforts to setting up Open Kitchens, which is based in Nottingham with over 46 kitchens across the UK. Since the start of the COVID pandemic, they've raised over £300,000 and produced around 170 free meals for their community, all through the restaurant industry. I'm really excited to hear about this because it's such a fantastic idea. Yeah.
Thank you. I'll probably try and explain what we've done and the journey we've been through and where we're trying to go in the context of a sort of timeline of how this came about. So I've basically graduated from university 13 years ago and set up a platform that showcases restaurants, and then people can book those restaurants and then restaurants effectively pay for the bums we place on the seats. For those in London, you've probably seen similar things with Top Table. That business is called Godine, Godine. We therefore have quite a big network of restaurants, and as a sort of natural consequence of building that business, about 5 years ago, we started to do digital marketing specific to the restaurant sector. So all in all, we work with hundreds of restaurants across the UK, all things web-based, all things digital. We've also built a couple of technologies, some that we still run, and some that we sold a technology to Michelin, who then use it for Book a Table, which they own. So I've somehow managed to spend the 13 years so far of my career solely working with restaurants, building technology, marketing, and that kind of thing. So yeah, when we went into lockdown, there's 15 of us in our offices in Nottingham, and it was obvious that with what's going on, these restaurants, we're going to have to close for a period. It's probably gone on and will go on for a lot longer than we originally anticipated, because we just didn't know at the time. None of us knew. But I remember, I think it was the 13th of March when the announcements were made, and 2 days later, we basically had, we saw about 90% of our work drop off. So I sat there and I thought, well, this isn't great. And the restaurants were struggling. We were seeing a lot of restaurants trying to do stuff for their communities, giving out supplies that they had, spare, toilet rolls, sanitary products, anything that people were struggling to access. And some were doing things like meals. And we thought, well, we can't operate commercially, so let's pull something together that has the potential to scale. And so we set up a platform, basically, which is Open Kitchens, openkitchens.co.uk, with the intention of encouraging restaurants to use the capacity in their kitchens, to use their kitchen facilities full stop during lockdown, when they were most of them stopped trading. I mean, you had some restaurants that did takeaway, but as a general rule of thumb, the vast majority of restaurants just closed up for, what has it been, about 3.5, 4 months. So fast forward a little, we set up our platform. We managed to get about 50 volunteers together. The aim was to create a platform whereby restaurants can onboard themselves by saying, we propose to cook these meals for our community. And the way it works is that our system generates a page on Just Giving for each individual restaurant that gets involved. Because we do a lot of marketing for restaurants, and these days restaurants have really big audiences of, let's face it, relatively affluent people. If you can go out to a Michelin star restaurant and pay £100 for dinner and that kind of thing, you're generally in a position where you can support in this kind of a situation. So the aim of it really was to work with restaurants to crowdfund money, and then to use this money to cover the costs of producing meals that would then go out in amongst the community. So we've really focused on the technology we've built, and we're just sort of still working on some bits where people who are in food poverty will be able to actually request meals, and then local charities are able to process and authorize those meal requests, and then it goes out to a driver network of volunteers, a bit like how Uber operates, where you can accept orders and do a routed delivery. So that's something we're looking at, that will launch in October. We've had 50 restaurants get involved, and collectively they've raised £320,000, which has resulted in about 180,000 meals. These are all restaurant meals, so they basically work for free. They volunteer. And the key to this, and the key sort of vision, if we talk about the vision side of it, is that nationally or across the UK, we've got around 200,000 commercial kitchens. Now, those commercial kitchens, whether it's before COVID, during COVID, after COVID, they have capacity. If you run a restaurant, there's plenty of times within your week to week where you're going to have some quiet periods. You're going to have some downtime, or days you even maybe closed, but nonetheless, they're not all flat out every minute of every day. So the idea is that in these downtimes, they can produce meals that go into sort of your takeaway containers that are recyclable, and then they get distributed to people in that community. And it's a great thing because you've got people coming through the doors of restaurants who can afford to maybe add £1 to the bill or follow them on social media who could donate. And we've seen even, you know, some customers donate up to like £1,000 on, you know, just one person. So our meals are averaging £1.60, and that covers the packaging, the gas and electricity, which is normally about 18-19 pence. And so they're working to about £1.40 purely for the ingredients. It's a win-win because the restaurants, it gives them some really good stuff to talk about on social media. It brings a lot of attention. So we've done a lot with getting celebrities to back it, stuff on social media, local radio. I've got to get up got an interview on BBC Radio Nottingham at 6:20 a.m. tomorrow, which I'm excited to get up for. I'm not an early riser, so that'll be fun. But yeah, so it's raised that profile. But that's good for restaurants. If you think about it, restaurants need to raise profiles because it's like one of the most heavily affected industries. So you need an edge. You need to get your name out. They're going to be fighting for business like never before, and most of them were struggling before we went into this crisis. So it's just a disaster. I mean, I was reading a report that was produced in America that suggests more than half of all restaurants in the US will permanently close as a result of COVID-19. So it's a very hand-to-mouth, cash-driven industry. But I think, you know, restaurants want to be and are often, you know, real big pillars of the community. So open kitchens, you know, we've ironed out and have built partnerships with Fair Share and food redistribution charities that mean that by working with us, we can give them label templates, help them with crowdfunding, be part of our network, which then gets the sort of attention and promotion to raise the money. So that piece is kind of taken care of. We know how to set them up. We know how they need to comply with health and safety. We've also set up a warehouse and an online store where they can buy packaging and masks and labeling. And so all they've got to do really is focus on producing the meals. And then our charity partners, Fair Share outside of London, and then in London, City Harvest and Felix Project, can effectively coordinate collection of the meals that are made by these restaurants and taken to their network of about 12,000 charities collectively across the UK that need these meals the most, whether that's YMCA centres or you know, you name it, homeless shelters. We're also starting to build a kind of calendar of events. So we're working with restaurants in Nottingham at the moment to do a initiative around feeding or getting nutritious meals to children who struggle, who are reliant on free school meals or live in poverty. And that's predominantly a nutritional issue. There's a lot of reports that say that kids since lockdown have basically had half of their usual intake of fruit and veg, which probably for a lot of kids isn't enough anyway, and twice the amount of sugary drinks and snacks. So for us, it's about, these are quality meals. These are meals that the restaurant might normally sell for like £10 plus each, but they're just paying for those ingredients. Cooking, you know, typically a restaurant who does this, they might do, during the crisis, the average restaurant was doing about 1,000 meals a week. They're now probably averaging more like 300. So we're looking to kind of keep scaling it. But it will be things like vegetable moussaka, or we have like beef stifado, and, you know, some really great stuff. We've even got, say, Michelin star restaurants who have been producing meals that have gone to, we had one that went to a, you know, homeless charity. And so what it's doing in a nutshell is the people receiving them are getting a real buzz, because some of these people, it's like some of the best food they've eaten, and that's the kind of feedback we're getting. So it gives them a boost, a sort of morale boost. It gives them a real nutritional hit, because we're sort of crafting meals that are highly nutritious and use really, really good quality ingredients. But it's supplementary. We're not looking to replace food banks. We're not looking to feed everybody, but we're looking to sort of lean on the restaurant industry to use latent capacity they have in their kitchens to produce meals funded by their customer who's in support of this, and then work with charity partners to get them to the people that need it. So the big thing really is about kind of scaling that. So we've partnered with Hilton, and the idea is sort of, I think from next month onward, we're looking to roll out across the Hiltons, because if you imagine a hotel, they have big conferences one day, then they have a quite, you know, not many people say in the restaurant next day, or they have huge peaks and troughs in capacity. So the idea is they can produce meals with these gaps, and then through, as a sort of secondary benefit of working with organisations like FareShare, they're also able to deploy into our network of restaurants surplus food. So they might have meats or cheeses. We had the other day, for example, one of our hotel restaurants in London took the London Hilton Metropole. They took a pallet of venison mince, which they made a venison chili with rice, and it was really delicious. And the average meal cost 25 pence, including about 12 pence for packaging and labelling, because it was basically all free food, but really high quality. They made 1,000 that went out to various local charities through the Felix project. So at its heart, we're looking at how we can leverage surplus food, which can also come from the restaurants themselves, particularly if they do catering, or if they're a hotel and they do big events. You don't tend to underfeed at big events. You always have food left over. So take that surplus food. Within that, I think there's an opportunity to take certain products which food banks and food redistribution charities struggle to distribute. An example being yogurts. You know, you've got a supermarket that drops 2 tons of natural yogurt off at your depot with 5 days on it. That's hard to shift. So we're looking at how we can leverage our restaurant kitchens to say, take that natural yogurt at short notice and turn it, say, into flatbreads, which can then be a frozen product. So all of a sudden you're saving food and giving it 3 months life. So there's the surplus food element, which brings the costs down, which we can save food that couldn't otherwise be saved. There's the nutritional element of meals rather than ingredients. We've seen that play out in scenarios where we have people who physically can't. I had a guy, for example, who couldn't stand long enough to cook. So he was just in his food parcels, just opening up the cold kidney beans and eating them on toast for like every meal for like 6 weeks. You know, it's just crazy. So there's the, I think within the space, within the organizations that need food and people that need food, there's a space for meals rather than ambient product and ingredients. So that's another benefit. But I actually think there's something in this for the restaurants which can't be underestimated. You know, that it gives you an edge. You know, I've seen restaurants where their customer base loves it and they're saying, "Oh, we're going to come back." And, you know, at the end of the day, I don't think anyone would disagree with the notion that you'd rather go and spend your hard-earned cash at a restaurant where you know the people that run it are decent people and they do a good job and they're doing good in the community. Or if you are a customer of a restaurant, and what I would say is over the years, the sort of brand loyalty has diminished. We all go to more places, try more things. So it gives them that edge. It gives them something positive to talk about. Chefs would rather be cooking than standing around in quiet gaps in the week. And there's a lot of opportunity to use surplus food. So all in all, we're looking to bring open kitchens to the UK restaurant industry as basically like a plug and play, you know, corporate social responsibility piece that delivers a level of commercial benefit that's sensible in its use of surplus food. And it's quite streamlined through kind of distributing these meals through third-party partnerships with organisations like FareShare. And technology is at the heart of that, you know, and marketing as well, you know, because that's our background. We're tech and marketing people working in the restaurant space. So how to get that message out, how to build the audience, how to engage celebrities, how to build technologies that allow our network of kitchens to pull down surplus food, to upload meals, to generate the labels. Like, we're all building that and hoping that we build some cool stuff that these charities can benefit from, because you know, I love them to bits, but some of the technology could improve, should we say. Logistics being a big area as well. Because actually, you know, one of the things I feel about the whole food poverty situation, or the whole issue with food we've got as a country, is that if you look at the ingredients, no pun intended, but you've got 2 million tons of food getting wasted every year. You've got, at the moment in COVID, 10 million people that need support with food. And we've got, you know, plenty of kitchens and organizations to get this food out. So for me, food scarcity, food poverty is a logistical issue as much as anything. And so we're looking at how we can bring about, and we can build a network that connects the surplus sector, the restaurant sector, the charity sector, through technology and logistics technology to kind of join these dots. So yeah, 200,000, nearly 200,000 meals later. So yeah, knackered.
I know exactly how you feel. You must be
And I've got
knackered.
2 kids as well, so it's a bloody nightmare if I'm honest, but it's all good. You know, it's my good deed for the, yeah. But yeah, it's been fun.
You really are
It's been emotional.
Though.
Trying to, yeah, we want to look at it something scalable and sustainable. You know, because like, you know, and I speak to friends who run their own businesses, and sort of, we spend a lot of money on marketing to, say, engage restaurants across the UK. And I've sort of got to a point where I'm thinking, well, is this a better way to do that? Is it a better way to do that in terms of, rather than just chucking money at marketing to sell sort of marketing services to restaurants, is by just doing something really good in this space, you know, and then you start to build relationships with restaurant owners, and they're genuine relationships because you know that you're doing something good together. And off the back of that, they're like, oh, you guys are really good at marketing, or, oh, you guys know how to build technology. Like, maybe you can help us with our social media marketing and so on and so on. And it's, so I use that, that's my excuse when I'm talking to our investors anyway, about what, you know, why I think strategically it's a good complement to our sort of business offering. You know, it's good for engagement within the space. And I would challenge business owners to kind of consider how charity can be a good way of growing genuine relationships within a space, rather than, say, you know, just chucking out sales and marketing messages left, right and center, which, you know, there's no real depth to that, versus building real connections with real people doing real good. And that's where the work, you know, that's where things progress from. You built that relationship and it might lead on to something else.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean, Adam. We've now got, thank you very much for that. That was really interesting. We've now got 15 minutes around for just a bit under for a Q&A. We've got a question from Chess, which I'll just read out now. I don't know which of the speakers are interested in speaking about this, but I'm feeling like Sonny might have a clue, given that he's got a farming background. How can we think about the need for people to access free, more affordable food when they need it, and the need to increase the value of food to make it a viable career that it so desperately needs to be our future? It's a big question. Do any of the three of you want to jump in and give your views on that?
Could you say that again? I actually missed the question. Sorry.
Sorry, Sonny. It's in the chat box. How can we think about the need for people to access free or more affordable food when they need it, and the need to increase the value of food to make it a viable career that it so desperately needs to be for our future? It's a very big question. He and saying that.
I think it's a combination of everything. Sorry to just jump in on this. I think it's a combination of everything that I think all speakers have spoken about. You know, what Suk is doing, what Adam is doing. I think it's a combination of all these different organizations tackling food injustice and food poverty in different ways, and then uniting everyone under the same banner. I think definitely a lot more soup kitchens. I don't like the word soup kitchen per se, but, you know, community spaces where food is cooked on a regular basis. You know, these should be community assets. So I think as we build on the community assets, that would definitely strengthen the food poverty and community. So yeah, I think more community assets and more people like Adam getting the corporate sector behind, you know, what we're doing in our community. That's an amazing big plus, that we're getting businesses and restaurants that are actually being more supportive of the community's needs as well as the business side of things. So that's my little input to that, an answer to that.
Nice. Suk or
I
Adam,
think
do you have any?
the only thing I'd say, just in terms of you know, good food's more expensive, but I think, you know, it's kind of an educational thing, isn't it? You know, I think one of the biggest problems we're being told about is that, you know, one of the biggest challenges we're trying to make an impact on is nutrition. You know, that an example being, I was talking to one of the guys that works with us. He's actually one of my managers, and he was telling me, I've got to be careful what I say, but he was telling me through conversations with people that are involved in schools, that they talk to the kids, and you've got kids saying, oh, you know, what did you have for dinner last night? And they'll say, like, I had a sausage roll. And, you know, I think that there's an educational piece that people need to understand. You can't understand too much, like how important proper food is and like what it does for your body. So I think, you know, when you're talking about proper farmed food versus, like, say, you know, cheaper food and supermarket food, which obviously massively affects the farming industry, then I think it's an educational thing that it's kind of creating that desire, you know, that not all food is equal. You know, you want people to eat like good quality fruit, good quality veg, good quality meat, nutritious meals. But to some people, you know, they generally just don't get what that means or what the benefit is. So for me, it's kind of like for the people that are in the know, as it were, that, you know, organic or certain food that's produced in a certain way is better for you or is worth the investment. I think they get that, but there's not enough people, or we could do with more people thinking like that, or more kids thinking like that. And I think that's the issue, really, is that since lockdown, there's just too many children and too many people just not eating the kind of food that the body needs.
I know. It's very upsetting to see, though. So the next question that we've got is, sorry, I'm just trying to find it. What do you all see as the challenges of eventually leaving lockdown? So since you didn't answer the last question, have you got any thoughts about that, or any of you really?
Yeah, sure. So the challenges are the same challenges as we faced prior to COVID and during COVID, is that if we, I mean, we've come together as a community, all the communities have come together, all the charities have come together, corporate sides, you know, companies have come together, and that needs to continue. If we now decide to just go back to our normal lives, if you can call it normal, then that's going to be the challenge. As it is, and something that Sunny touched on as well, about government funding and lots of pots of small funding that is available for charities and you know, groups, mutual aid groups, etc., to actually set up hubs in and around pockets of area where there's extreme poverty, food poverty. That's the key, I think, and that's something that we're kind of looking towards ourselves, alongside other charities, to create hubs where there will be continuous good food. As Adam mentioned, there is a kind of a real issue of education with the quality of food and what people are actually consuming these days. It's, you know, and I think that's the kind of thing we want to look at now, at the back of doing the million meals, basically.
Very good point. Adam or Sunny, do you have any points about that you'd like to add in on?
For me, like, I mean, just to give you a bit of insight into our strategy and sort of how we feel it needs to evolve. I mean, in lockdown, you know, there's one restaurant that springs to mind, for example, where he was willing to cook 2,500 really good quality restaurant meals per week for 12 weeks. That was his commitment, which was incredible. And now we've come out of this period and he's trying to, you know, operate again, which is at about 30-40% capacity. These, you know, it's going to be a nightmare for restaurant operators. But he's now doing more like 300 meals a week. So it's like just over 10% of what he was able to do in lockdown. So the obvious solution from our end on that is to increase the number of restaurants we work with, but they're doing less meals. Which isn't a bad thing either, because you're then working with more brands that have more audience, which is easier then to raise more funding to kind of fund the production of these meals. You've got more people to kind of communicate with through these restaurants. So I think that's the first thing, is that we basically have had to change our tact to less quantity per restaurant and therefore more restaurants. But the other thing, and I think there's got to be a realism about, one of the things I'm conscious of is at the end of the day, it's hard being self-employed, it's hard running a business, it's hard running a restaurant. So you have to make it clear what the commercial benefit is as well, or you have to sort of, help them to understand that this is a great thing to do, but when they're fighting for their business lives, you also got to join the dots as to how that can support it. The fact that if they're trying to boost, say, a new product, like they're moving into, say, selling takeaways, that by doing this, it's bringing an extra 10,000 eyes on their brand on social media each month, which they can then talk about their takeaway offering to, or it's increasing their customer loyalty. So I think there needs to be sort of like, to make it sustainable, there has to be like a link between the charitable output and the commercial gain. Otherwise, people will do stuff for so long, but then they've got to, keep their businesses going and keep their staff paid and keep their restaurants and whatever afloat. In our case, so I think that's important as well. Is to sort of make it clear that it's bringing both benefits. It's gives you that warm fuzzy feeling of helping people, but it actually is also quite a positive thing for the business to be doing, and not be afraid to kind of make that clear, even though it sort of feels like the antithesis of sort of charity. But I actually think it's needed if it's going to be sustainable. That an organisation doing it can think, well, actually, I get far more reach and engagement and awareness than when I spend 10 times that on PR and marketing. Okay, well, great, you're saving money, but you're also doing something really good. So that for me is the sort of way to make it sustainable going forward when we leave lockdown.
Yeah, it's a very difficult tension between the two things, isn't it? I think our final question, if this is all right, is that we're on the edge of a recession. What do you see the role of government, given that the three of you are, I suppose, grassroots organisations working primarily off your own backs? I don't know if you would say that, but what do you see the role for government in the future with food?
Personally, if I can step in with that one, I honestly think it's time that governments and councils actually start supporting organisations like ourselves, instead of us having to volunteer and commit our time and work tirelessly behind the scenes. And then all of a sudden we're told, oh, we can support you, but you need to go through all of these funding processes and fill out applications. And there's a lot of grassroots organisations that ain't able to fill out funding applications. So I think what the government can do is appoint an officer, a community officer, someone who their role is actually to go around, to meet people in their community, to get to know who people are. And it's a constant thing and I'm sure everyone in this sector is told, you've got to learn how to talk when it comes to writing funding applications. I'm sorry, but I'm sure that I'm talking English, and I'm sure that the language I learned how to write was English. So I'm not aware what this advice means. If you've got to talk a certain language to get some support, there must be something wrong with that system. So yeah, and another thing I would say, just touching on the previous question, a lot of volunteers are going to be returning back to work. So that's why I'm making Edible London sustainable and venturing in different business sectors. So where we make money, we can afford to employ people who are doing things that will never make money. Someone who's turning up to a growing space of Edible London's to just welcome the community and facilitate a volunteer session. There's no money earned in that. And I don't want to charge my community to come to a growing space to learn skills. That's not growth. So yeah, I suppose maybe the government understanding that when they do start people working again, the volunteer sector is going to lose a lot of skill set, a lot of people with time. And to help us, to start helping us, we're already helping them. We're already helping our community. It'd be nice for them to help us.
I agree. We need a national food service. Look, have you got any thoughts?
I've got similar thoughts to Sunny, and I think from our side, obviously, we understand that we're actually in the recession right now. there's a false economy where everybody is kind of, have gone on this mortgage holiday and haven't been able to pay their rent or haven't been asked to pay their rent, but sooner or later, people are going to become unemployed. And so the government are going to face severe issues. And there's been a lot of cuts behind the scenes to services because of all this funding that's been made available, already. So I think on one side, obviously, I do wish that the government kind of help services to ensure that people are getting food. However, on the other side, we have to be quite conscious and understand that there's going to be a massive deficit in funding and the economy that COVID has left. And I think this is an opportunity for corporates to step in and say, sponsor certain areas, or sponsor meals. So I know that there's been numerous kind of things that organizations are doing, or at least that are talking about, so if you buy one meal, we'll give one meal out, and I think that is the way forward rather than expectation from government, because otherwise we'll be in that same place again where the expectations are going to be met with no real nothing, and basically we're just going to be kind of thinking, oh, well, what shall we do now? Rather than do that, we should be kind of already thinking about how we can work with corporates and put something in place so that when people do need meals, we can say, okay, certain area, like for example London, is going to be covered by some big corporate companies who can afford to give one meal to a person every time such and such is done. I don't know, some sort of system. Adam, help me out.
Well, I agree. I think I've got quite a strong view on this, and probably I don't mean to offend any of the sort of government side of things or the council side of things, but financially they're in an absolute mess. If they were businesses, they would be bankrupt. Getting money out of them is like getting blood out of a stone. It's not necessarily the best use of time half the time. In our situation, what we've given to councils and I suppose the government, if you will, is more than we've got back. So I think they're in our pocket, not the other way around. So I don't see them as councils and the government as a way to sort this situation. I think, as Suk was saying, and Sonny, I think it's the corporate space, and I think our objective will be to kind of, I suppose, at a high level, encourage companies and organisations to shift some of the money they existingly spend into what hopefully is a better use of that money. So organisations that invest into, say, PR but go down a more traditional route, or marketing and brand awareness, can look at charitable things as a more cost-effective, more beneficial thing for society than, say, what they were doing previously. So for me, it's the sort of corporate route. The other side of it, which we haven't really touched on, is just speed. Councils and the government, particularly, nothing happens within in my opinion, a reasonable time frame. Everything's so slow and archaic, and there's no, when you think of councils and the government, technology isn't really their forte either, and we need technology to get stuff done on scale as a general rule of thumb. So I feel that in a number of respects that the organisations are just not set up to assist in the way we need them to. However, nimble corporations that have deep pockets, who, it's about sort of encouraging them to see this as a better use of some of their money to do good in the community, whether locally or nationally. So that's going to be our focus, is getting big organizations, your Unilevers, your private equity firms, you name it. And we've had funding, for example, we've had 3 times the funding from a private equity firm as we have, say, from our local council. So
send them our way, please.
Yeah. So you know what I mean? So for me, it's about the commercial side of it.
I completely agree with what you're saying, though. Sorry, Adam. Everything that you're saying, I totally agree with, and I feel like it's showing exactly why this webinar needed to happen and why we needed to connect all the dots up and why we need ultimately a national food service and community groups coming together. And it just shows how rubbish the state is that we all kind of, at the moment, that we all kind of agree on this. But unfortunately, we've run out of time. This is the first in our webinar series, so we've got 3 more, one next week with the directors of the National Food Service branches, the week after that with leading food justice academics across the country, and then the week after that, all on Thursday at 7 p.m, with large food organisations and more directors of the National Food Service thinking about the future of the National Food Service. So if anybody's interested in that, the ticket links are on our Facebook and Instagram page. But I've really, really enjoyed this. It's been really, really inspiring, and I'm so pleased that we've managed to do it and to hear from the 3 of you. So thank you very much for coming and hearing and speaking to us. Yeah, and if anyone wants to hear more, just sign up on the National Food Service website and we'll be in touch, because there's a lot to do, as we're hearing now.
Thank you.
Been a pleasure, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
See ya.
Oh, and if you fancy donating, openkitchens.co.uk.
We'll put it on our
Let's make London edible.
It would be remiss of me not to mention that. It's my job. So yeah, cheers, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Big love, guys.
Bye.